If doing seller finance deals is something that you're interested in as a real estate investor, this is going to be a great episode for you. If it's something you've not really ever thought about and something that you really haven't put any kind of effort towards at all, you have no interest in maybe, it's still going to be a really good episode because you definitely want to learn about more exit strategies. Not that you should do all of them. Not everything that's talked about on this podcast should be implemented in your business, but you might hear something today that maybe you're not interested in doing seller finance as a business, but the way that Wyatt talks about how he markets to his leads in a seller finance business might translate well over to something that you try to implement and change in your marketing in your wholesaling business, just straight up wholesaling business. Cash offers, that's maybe what you do, but there's maybe a slightly different way that you should market to a seller finance lead as opposed to just a fair cash offer lead. And that's something that you can implement and it changes your entire marketing strategy. So I want you to listen up, even if it's not something you're interested in, but I know that seller finance as a business is something that a lot of people are becoming interested in. I was very excited to get my good friend Wyatt Reed on the show today. I've known him for a few years. We talk about how we met and that sort of thing. Don Costa, a mutual friend of ours, introduced us. But he talks about a handful. We actually go through a handful of topics, but one of the overarching things that we really discussed today on the podcast is how seller finance leads are just almost a whole different ball game than just your typical motivated seller lead that you're looking to wholesale their deal. You're looking to, give them a fair cash offer and then, assign that property to a cash buyer on your end or whatever it is. There's a little bit of tenderness that goes towards a seller finance lead that you typically wouldn't give that kind of attention to your regular lead if you're just a wholesaler. So we talk about kind of the way that works. He's changed his marketing quite a bit in the last few years of his business, and it's very interesting to hear what he has to offer. So obviously, if you guys are interested in connecting with him, we'll have all of that linked down in the description below, but you can go to sellerfinancedeals.com to connect with him and his program. He also has a great podcast called Ascend Your Success, which is a phenomenal podcast. He has a lot of great guests on there. It's a little bit more than just real estate, but you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. It's a great one. We dig deep into some really, really strategic marketing tactics when it comes to seller finance deals. So make sure you listen up and you guys enjoy the show. Here's my good friend, Wyatt Reed. All right, guys, today I have my good friend, Wyatt Reed, on the podcast. I'm super excited to have him here. Wyatt and I have met, man, I think it's been like close to 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, Don Costa introduced us, and then we met for the first time at one of his events. I believe, or maybe it was a Sean McCloskey event.
Sean McCloskey, yeah. We had some lunch together with Don.
Yeah, Don was there. Yeah, I remember that now. I was like, I know Don was there, and I couldn't remember if it was his event, but then, yeah, it was in St. Louis, so that was cool, man. Well, we've known each other for a little bit of time. I've obviously followed a lot of your social media, the entire time you've been putting it out. You talked to me early on in your, career and, about content and that sort of thing. So happy I was able to give you a little bit of advice. But today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different than what we typically talk about. So if you're listening right now, you are probably doing some sort of lead generation and you're sending direct mail, you're sending texting and you're cold calling and whatever it is that you're doing in your marketing, SEO, PPC, so many different things. But today we're going to kind of skew the conversation a little bit differently because if you're talking to motivated seller leads, your conversations are going to be, I wouldn't say standardized, but like for everybody that's doing wholesaling, your conversations are going to be similar for each other. Wyatt specializes specifically in his programs that he has, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, specializes in seller finance. So seller finance is something that has really kind of come to the fold the last couple of years, and a lot of people are very interested in learning about it just because the options that it can provide when it comes to the exit strategy, right? For you as a real estate investor, but also the options for the seller. So in terms of marketing, and I know that, I asked you this before you hopped on, you don't only do seller finance in your active real estate investing business, but in terms of like seller finance, somebody that's possibly learning right now that's listening to the podcast, but they're learning about getting into seller finance, what are some things that you had mentioned the conversation's a little bit different than a typical, motivated seller lead. So how is that conversation different than if, I'm a wholesaler and I'm talking to a lead versus I'm doing a seller finance deal? What does that conversation kind of shake out to be?
Yeah, man, I believe that 95% of wholesalers, real estate investors, especially newer investors, all they're given is cash offers, right? And so you're just like everybody else pitching lowball cash offers. I do pitch a cash offer to anchor where we want to start. And if they take it, awesome. But I can most of the time come up $10 to $20 to even $30,000 more because I know how to pitch multiple offers, right? And that's something that if you're learning how to get into this game, you need to have multiple pitches as far as offers go. And so, like, for example, if I'm talking to a tired landlord, and this is somebody that's kind of my target audience, right? A tired landlord who's got properties, that person likes cash flow, right? They got into it because they wanted passive income, but they probably didn't realize that how hard it was, or how people don't take care of your crap, or there's always something to be fixed, right? And so I start the conversation off after he rejects my cash offer. I let him reject that first, right? And then I say, well, hey, look, you're a landlord. You like mailbox money, right? But you obviously just don't want to deal with it anymore. Am I right? I get them to say yes, like getting them to answer you and say yes multiple times. There's a little psychology to that, right? But I say, well, hey, let's do this. Have you ever heard of seller financing? And 9 times out of 10, I just have to educate them on the whole process, right? Yeah. And so one thing that when you're pitching seller financing, you don't want to do is you don't want to be the first one to put the numbers out there. Like, what are you happy with as far as a down payment? What would you want? What would you be happy with a monthly payment? If I could do this and take over that responsibility, and you truly get that passive cash flow that you wanted in the very beginning, would you be willing to do something like that?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, guys, you might be listening, you might be thinking like, Josh, what does that have to do with marketing? This is sales. And my answer to this is always sales and marketing overlap all the time. Like, there's very gray and blurred lines between the two. Sometimes there's easy handoffs, but oftentimes, like, if you're in the, do you visit, like, is a appointment with somebody, like, face to face, a common thing if you're having this type of conversation?
No, not really. Especially with landlords, they just say, hey,
right, just a phone call. Yeah. So obviously, the type of conversation that you have with somebody over a phone, in person's a little bit easier to be able to quote unquote sell yourself, right? Because you're in their living room, you get to see facial expressions and the whole body language situation and that sort of thing, and reading each other. But when you're on a phone call, like, it's a whole different ball game, especially the conversation that you're having right now. And I do think that instead of using the word selling or the term selling yourself to them, the way that you explained it, I almost look at it as you're marketing yourself to them. It's a whole different way of looking at it, because you're really sitting there not trying to sell them into working with you. You're trying to provide a solution for them. So you're marketing your services as a solution to their problem and anchoring it that way. Do you think that's a fair way to look at it, or what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree, because if you're just throwing lowball cash offers, you're not solving any problem. All you're thinking about is money. And so you need to be listening to these people and finding ways to make win-win situations. There are multiple ways that you can get a deal done, and that's why I love real estate, right?
Yeah.
But, you got to just sit there and listen and bring value. You got to have a passion to help people, because if you're doing bad business, I mean, like, you can't do bad business long term, right?
Yeah.
You just got to be a problem solver.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to kind of spin this in a different direction. You talked about, like, tired landlord. How are you finding these tired landlords? I know you do direct mail and a few other things, but what are some of your best marketing tactics, like when it actually comes to specifically marketing of you acquiring these leads?
Yeah, man, I'm super boring. So when I first got started doing it, I was pulling my own list from PropStream, skip tracing them, cleaning them. I had somebody teach me how to do all that. It was very, very like, it wasn't hard, but it took time, right?
Yeah.
And so that was one of the last things I let go as far as my business goes, because I trust my data. If there's something wrong with it, it's something that I did, right? But now we just use turnkey marketing businesses like REI Print Mail or Lead Mining Pros with Nick Nicholas, right? We use those guys, and they do everything for you. And like, that's what I've been pushing people towards. Yes, it's a little bit more pricey, but it's done for you. So now I don't have to teach you how to pull a list, skip a list, clean a list, and do all that. these guys do it for you, and it's definitely worth paying the extra money to get it done.
Yeah, for sure. Have you seen a little bit of relief since you made that switch? Like, what's life been like on the marketing side when it comes to that?
Yeah, man. It's sometimes I get in my head about it. Like if I have a bad month, I'm like, oh, I'd probably do better if I was pulling my own list. But then, you can't think like that. Real business people track KPIs, and as long as you're trending in the way you need to be trending, then they're doing what they need to be doing, right? So
yeah,
it is a relief. I've taken almost everything off of my own plate. We've got systems and processes in place, and I've been on like 6 vacations, and I know you said we're not doing any like motivational or lifestyle stuff, but like it's so important like to get things in place so that you're not working for a job, right? You're not having a high paying job.
Yeah, well, the reality is too that like if you have the proper marketing channels set in place and they're being done well, they're being kept track of, and they're actually performing the way that they're supposed to and bringing those leads in, then it can give you peace of mind. It can be bringing in the business that you're supposed to be getting and allow you to do those things, right? As long as it's running the way it's supposed to and you're keeping track of that, which on that topic, you mentioned KPIs. Do you mind sharing maybe a couple of KPIs, like even just high-level stuff that you really keep your eye on and make sure that you're kind of running, and you can specify it to whatever marketing channel that you're running as well?
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. You should be tracking how much money you paid for that marketing platform. How many leads did you get from that marketing? How many appointments did you get from those leads? How many contracts you got from those appointments? And then how many closed deals you get from those offers, right? And so that just shows you a broad overview of what your business looks like. Now I can say, okay, well, it takes me, $1,500 on a postcard to get one deal a month, right? So if I want to do 3 deals a month, then I just amp it up and, track that. It's not an exact science, obviously, but that's how it should work, right? You track the data and you make those changes in your business. And so, like, for example, I just started testing out the lead mining pros, the done for you cold calling and texting, right? And so I've done 3 months so far, and I've gotten one deal out of every $500 to $600 that I and that's ridiculous. So I don't it's in a good market that I'm in that I was testing out, and I'm obviously like overjoyed with but it doesn't always work out to 500 to 600 per deal, right? So that's kind of what I look at.
Yeah, for sure. And the reality is too is like when it comes to that kind of like marketing, one of the first episodes that we had when we restarted this show was with Andrew Lucas, and he talked about, you could really, there's kind of 2 ways that you can run marketing. You can spend your time for marketing, or you can spend your money on marketing, or you can do both. There's a little bit of both, but ultimately, like driving for dollars, you're spending your time doing that marketing, right? Cold calling, you're spending time to do the marketing, or you can leverage capital and money and have somebody else do it, like what you're doing with lead mining pros. And I think that's, kind of the decision on the person that's, got the business in their hands, right? Like, do you want to spend all of your time, or maybe even you have employees or whatever, but if you could just have it done for you, maybe it's a little bit of a different conversation. We'll have to get Nicholas Nick on this show to talk about that too. But from your perspective, what's kind of like the biggest shift in the kind of the way that leads are being brought in? And you may not even see the operations of kind of what they're doing to bring the leads in, but is the quality of the leads better than when you do it yourself overall? Like maybe you have ups and downs, but what's like the quality of the leads? Because I know that's a big concern that people might have if it's a done for you type service, but what's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, you get, so I'll just share my last KPIs from my first campaign. It was, I think I paid $569 just to test out the system. I got 20 leads. Out of those 20, I think we did 8 appointments, and we got one deal under contract that we're closing for $15,000. Like, I'll do that every day of the week. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but all of those other leads, I would say probably half of those leads were no good, right? But that's the way it is in marketing. Like in the long term, no matter what you're doing, you're going to get crap leads, whether you're doing it yourself or whether somebody else is doing it, right? You just gotta you got to stay consistent and know that it's a volume game. It's strictly numbers. You can't be emotional about it. Like, it's just volume.
Interrupting this podcast episode to tell you guys that this podcast is managed and produced by Color Media Productions. Yes, shameless plug, that's my company. However, we do this for a lot of other people as well. Most people that we work with are in the real estate investing space. So if you're listening to this podcast specifically, you probably are a real estate investor, given it's called the REI Marketing Weekly. If you're somebody that either wants to start a podcast or you have one going and it's becoming a little bit of a hassle, you're looking to transition to somebody that works a little bit better with a fluid motion in terms of you get the recordings done and then they do everything else. Well, that's what we do. We do fully managed podcasts from start to finish, video, audio, show noting, the graphics, publishing, everything that goes into it. It's a full service business that we run here in a service for you as a real estate investor if you are running a podcast. Additionally, we also do social media and YouTube management as well. So all of that being on the organic side, if you are interested in learning more about working with us and just recording content with guidance and strategy set by myself personally, and then not doing anything else after that, where we're taking care of everything from start to finish, then make sure you go check us out at colormedia.com, CULLER media.com. Hit us up there and we can learn more about working together, hop on a phone call and see what we could do for you. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, for sure. Now, in your internal business, do you have team members that are taking those calls and going on appointments, or is it just you? Like, what does your team structure look like from the acquisition standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about the done for you systems is it's kind of like it's a junior acquisitions person that's essentially bringing in leads, right, or a lead manager or something like that. I do have acquisitions guys who take calls and go out and look at properties and things like that. I handle most of the back end just because I'm more of a buy and hold guy. Like, I'm seller financing. I care more about cash flow, so I don't really have a big team, but I do stuff like that, and I partner with other people as well to for equity and things.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to circle back around to the seller finance type business, because I think that's, again, once again, this is something that we just really haven't had much on when it comes to this show and any type of content for that. I guess that's really specializes in that. So when it comes to the students that you work with, we'll give you the opportunity to talk about the program here in just a second. But the people that you're working with and helping coach them and kind of mentor them in their business, what have you seen as like, whether it's marketing or sales, has been the best contributor to locking deals down and getting them closed and actually making money when it comes to specifically the seller finance side of real estate?
Yeah, I mean, you've already said it when you were talking about the sales and marketing being kind of aligned together. There are so many people who call us back that we've talked to already that have been like, hey, I don't want to sell now, but I do want to sell, and I'm going to sell to you because this is how you sound, this is how you talk to me, you've put this time in with me. And so building that rapport and having a strong person that's on the phone that's, just doing what they need to do and getting the information they need to get, but also building that relationship with them to make sure that they know and trust you, right? And that's really hard to do over the phone, but we've kind of dialed that in, and it's been really, really solid for us as far as closing more deals as dialing in that sales call.
Yeah, for sure. And you see a lot of your students have really capitalized on those types of conversations then?
Yeah, I mean, we role play every Tuesday night, how to overcome objections, how to pitch multiple offers. Like, that's something huge that we put into our coaching for that.
Yeah, for sure. And once again, guys, like, this isn't a sales podcast. This is a marketing podcast, right? Like, there's plenty of other people that could teach you sales. But again, like, if there's something that, somebody that's a guest on the show that's doing something really well on the sales side, the conversations, the way that they're holding those conversations with seller leads, we want to know what that is, because that ultimately helps market them, especially if it's that first interaction. Like, do you find that typically you have to hit a lead multiple in seller finance? Because let's pretend I'm a novice, like I know nothing about seller finance, but is it a quicker path in your marketing for a seller finance lead to get them on a phone call than, say, like a wholesale lead? Or is it like you have to hit them 25 times before they actually give you a call back? What does that, like,
dude,
look like?
I'll be honest with you. We scaled up our business, and we had all these systems and processes, and we were hitting people like 30 times a month, and it was honestly, we were making a crap ton of money, but it was the worst time of my life, right?
Oh man.
So we completely scaled down, and I've been looking at different and playing around with different CRMs that do a little bit more follow-up systems, but dude, I don't really have any good follow-up systems. Like, we're getting these people on the phone. As soon as the lead comes in, we're getting them on within 3 hours. And we're setting appointments on the first call, and we're going out like within a couple of days. So the upfront conversation is great. If we do have to follow it with somebody, it's as of right now, it's more of a manual system than anything. You know, we set reminders on the calendar, like, so you don't have to be, you know, this big shot that's got all these systems and processes going to do deals. I mean, I've got 9 deals going, and I closed 12 last month, and so without all of that fancy stuff, right? So
yeah, for sure. From a marketing systems perspective, I heard a wise man once say that the best CRM that you can use is the one that you use. And it's the truth of it, right? Like, I still know people that don't use a automated system or a platform for lead follow-up. Like, it's a notepad and pen, or it's a spreadsheet, and that works for them as long as you keep up with it. Now, the downfall is, like, obviously, if you're listening right now, like with Wyatt said, I mean, if you have something in place and you don't use it and it's falling apart and it's breaking, like, you need to, don't just stick to that just because, like, you think it works and you're telling yourself a lie. Like, make sure you find something that is going to work for you, because, again, follow-up is one of the biggest keys to success in marketing. It's not just, like, everybody thinks that, you know, if I send, you know, if I have a mail drop and it's going to go out, let's say 10 times in the next 6 months to this one lead, that every piece is just another marketing piece, or I think that it's just follow-up pieces. It's marketing follow-up. Because if I market to them one time and they get the mail piece, and even if they call me, but if I drop another like 5 to 10 more postcards to them over the next 6 months, that's just follow-up from a marketing perspective. And obviously, like, sales follow-up is when you pick up the phone, call them, and that sort of thing. But marketing and sales follow-up, if you're doing both of those, like, chances are you're at least going to get a hard no, or you're going to get the deal closed and it's going to get pushed through, right? Like, I think that's important to understand.
Yeah, so, like, that's a great example. So for me, on the marketing side, I do at a minimum 3 months on the direct mail. So I'll hit the same list for 3 months. If I'm continuing to get leads, then I'm going to hit it again, right? But on the cold calling texting side, I've hit the same list for the past 4 months, and it's still providing leads. So I'm going to continue to do that, right?
Yeah.
So
milk the cow until there's nothing left, right? Like, that's important. That's another truth in marketing. That's another hot tip for you, is like, if you are seeing success in a marketing channel, milk it until it no longer can provide anything for you. And then you know, obviously, like, once you start seeing it fizzle out, then you start another list, or you go to another channel and then pour more fuel on that fire. But, you know, that's the reality. I think people stop too soon, and then it, like, kind of convolutes the system and the process there. Now, one of the last conversations I want to have with you here is, if you don't mind me asking, you had mentioned that there was a time period where you guys, you know, were on fire and you were marketing super hard, and it was miserable for you. You scaled back. Can you explain, like, what that process is? Because I think that's, you know, for somebody that's listening right now and maybe they're just getting started, this is foreign to them, right? Like, they're like, oh, I wish I had the amount of leads that Wyatt had coming in, and they just don't know. So, like, what was that whole situation like, and why was it miserable?
Yeah, it really wasn't even the leads. Like, I'm a nerd. I love the marketing. I love the KPIs. Like, I have bar graphs and charts and everything like that. So I'm a nerd on that part. But it was more of the strategies that we were using at the time. So we scaled up a flipping business, and we were doing 5 or 6 flips at a time, and we were robbing Peter to pay Paul, and, like, we couldn't keep contractors, and we were making a crap ton of money, but it was all being sucked down a dark hole that we have no clue where it all went, right? So that was the more of the reason why we were miserable. You know, it was taking up all of our time. So when we swapped to that portfolio style, once you get your cash flow right, you can't tell me nothing. I'm not doing anything that I don't want to do anymore, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's important for people to understand. Is obviously, we want to know what your wins are, but I think losses can teach just as much, if not more, than the wins, right? And the things that you're doing. So let's go ahead and talk about your program. So sellerfinancedeals.com is where people can find you, but can you give a little bit of a spiel? What can people expect if they were interested in working with you on that?
Yeah, man. I mean, the thing is that I would say most people want to get into real estate to have passive income coming in, right? Mailbox money, everybody loves that. But what they don't understand is tenants suck, toilets, squeaky doors, things like that. They don't take care of your property. So through seller financing, we teach people how to make more cash flow per door, get capital down, like flip capital, wholesale capital, and, long-term cash flow, and without any of the responsibilities. Tenants pay insurance, taxes, and they maintain the property because they're, buying that property. So all the upside, none of the downside, and I think it's the best strategy. If I could go back to 5 years ago when I first started, that would be the one thing that I would change. So that's what I want to work with people and get actual cash flow coming in and help people quit their jobs,
Yeah, absolutely. So sellerfinancedeals.com, you guys will leave that down in the description below. I do have one final question for you. I love branding. What's with the buffalo on the logo? I got to know.
The first reason is my mentor hated my name and the logo and told me to do something and get an animal. And so everybody does the rhino. So I was like, I'm doing a rhino. So buffalo, they're a part of a herd. They're a part of the community. I love community. And they're one of the only animals that face towards the storm and run into it, which may be stupid, but that's it's an interesting fact, right? So
you get through it quicker if you go towards it, though. Exactly. That's interesting, dude. I've never thought of that before. That's really cool. Yeah. Did you actually think about that yourself, or did you have somebody?
I think Joe Rogan. I heard it on Joe Rogan or something like that. Yeah, it was on a podcast.
But it just kind of like made a chime in your head, and you're like, oh, that's cool.
Definitely
interesting. Yeah, that's good. I've never even heard of that before. That's pretty cool. But guys, once again, sellerfinancedeals.com. Wyatt, I appreciate your time, man. This has been so much fun. I am going to be a guest on your podcast. I think we're recording a week from today, possibly when we're recording this right now. So, guys, we're going to leave Wyatt's podcast as well. Do you want to talk about that real quick? Also, like what can people expect, and obviously the name of the podcast and everything.
Dude, it's the ascendyoursuccess.com. Ascend Your Success podcast, and we just bring on people and we talk about their journey from the beginning to the end, how they've pivoted, what were their losses, what were their wins, how can our beginner listeners listening, how can they build something better than we did from the beginning, right? And so that's what we want to look for.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll leave the link to Wyatt's show down below in the description, guys, so make sure you do go check that out. Once again, I'm going to be a guest on there here shortly, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But Wyatt, I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for hanging out for a little bit, and look forward to having you back again soon.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining and listening. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, do me a huge favor and leave a review with your honest feedback. I would love to hear that. And also, this does go out to YouTube as well. So if you are more of a YouTube consumer, just go search for my name, Josh Culler, and you'll find that show there. And we're going to be putting out lots of content there. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today and stopping by, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you guys.